Access. I'm getting an echo from you. Is there any way that you can fix that?
It should be fixed now.
All right. Okay. Looks like you're on my thing. Can you talk to make sure my audio is good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your stream, can you hear me?
They can, in fact, hear you. So, to start this out, I guess I'll start with the most obvious of questions. Who do you think won the 2020 election?
Donald J. Trump.
Donald J. Trump won the 2020 election, and because that is different from the general narrative, would you like to provide a little bit of evidence supporting that claim?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you are well aware of the commonly espoused positions of a lot of people who hold not positions, excuse me, wrong word. A lot of the commonly espoused pieces of evidence, uh, some circumstantial, some hard evidence in the form of video documentation, documentaries, mathematical arguments, etc., etc. So, what I think would be more productive is a discussion of why you are so sure the election was legitimate. Because I have not heard your reasoning. I'm sure you're familiar with all of the things my side says. I have not heard your personal reasons.
So, my personal reasons, first of all, the initial claims of fraud came from Donald J. Trump that were completely unfounded. This has been supported by almost every single person surrounding him at the time, has come out and said this was BS. There was no evidence. We showed him evidence against his own claims. So that was just the initial claims. Going on from there, there was multiple audits, hand recounts, all of these things ensuring the validity of the elections, which is primarily in 5 states that were in question. And I've got points for literally everything. I don't think I'm going to go through every single one right now. But there's plenty of people, both on the left and the right, that have come out that have some form of close attachment to the issue, that have said what Donald J. Trump said was completely unbased in facts. Courts have ruled against him. Literally everything has ruled against him. If there was facts, a lot of the courts would not have ruled against him.
Okay, and so you are I'm trying to decide how I want to phrase this because I don't want to straw man you, so let me just order this. So your position is that because people around Trump and on his side politically and against him and all of the courts have said this is the way this is, you believe it.
And because it has been audited, recounted, examined, all of these things, and there has not been any substantial evidence of fraud that would lead you to conclude that the election should have gone towards Trump.
Okay. You were in my chat, lurking last night while I was watching the documentary, so I'm going to ask if you've ever finished 2,000 Mules.
I have seen good portions of it outside of your stream, but I've seen good portions of it, and it was almost everything is very easily debunkable. There's some things that are a little bit harder, but pretty much everything is just easily debunkable.
Okay. I would like to go through the points that film makes and ask you how you would debunk them.
Okay.
Like, give me what premises that you say are easily debunkable from the film, and we'll go.
How about considering you haven't actually really answered any of my questions? How about you give me a point from the movie, or the documentary, whatever you call it, and I will explain to you why it is wrong.
Okay. Explain to me how the cell phone data cannot be used to track these people's movement.
So the geo tracking, as I think what the actual documentary called it, right? The geo tracking. First of all, let's look at the validity of the geo tracking. Engelbrecht, I believe is her name, the founder of True to Vote. She claimed that the geo tracking data had solved two murders that were close to cold cases. Only one of those was actually shown in the documentary, and authorities from where that was held told NPR that the case was not used, or that the geodata was not used in the case to solve it. Um, so there is iffy evidence on whether or not that is actually valid data. Second of all, the geo-tracking was only shown in those 5 states that are at question. It didn't show the rest of the states, which means it didn't show whether or not the actions there were different than the actions in every state. It also shows location data, not people actually visiting polls. Drop boxes are usually in very high traffic areas that are common to either be near in your day-to-day life or drive by, walk by, just normal to be around. I don't know about you, but I have walked past many of drop boxes on a daily basis. And then also, Chen Qian, I don't know how to say his last name. He is an associate professor of computer science and engineering. Says that there was a research paper written by AT&T and Purdue University in 2020, and said the average location error of 5G networks would vary from 2 meters to 10 meters, saying they cannot triangulate the data exactly at the Dropbox.
Let me ask you something. Just a completely face value question. Have you ever worked a job where you had a company device?
Yes.
Like, you have? Okay.
Yes.
Was it a delivery job?
No.
No. Okay. So the reason I'm asking about this is because I've worked several jobs where you either had to have a company device at all times, or the company has made you install an app on your personal phone. The assertion that you cannot get an accurate pin on a modern cell phone is a lie on its face. The average cell phone in a well covered area, which, and I think we can agree that any metropolitan area where there's going to be a large concentration of ballot boxes would be, any of those metropolitan areas are usually, more often than not, very well covered by cell service. Any place where you have good cell coverage, a pin can be within 3 feet of you easily. I know this because I've worked delivery jobs where if your pin was 3 feet away from that person's front door, the company called you to ask why you didn't leave the package at the right place. This idea that you cannot have a pin know exactly where someone is, it's a few meters at best. That's a lie on its face.
Do you have evidence supporting that? Because I am the one that's coming in here with actual evidence supporting my claims. So if you have evidence supporting that right now, you can state that, or we can move on to whatever your next point is on the documentary.
Do I have the specs of geosynchronous technology inside the average phone on me right now?
Because I will also say the study that I cited says that their results were simulated in ideal settings used for predictions. They are not real experiments because 5G has not been available everywhere. In real environments, the errors would be larger. I would say that outside of a lab is a real environment. That would be anywhere, including like a city.
Well, yeah, by definition.
Yeah. So that's saying 2 meters really would be like the very least that this ping will get you.
Well, 2 meters, that's still only 6 feet. That's only 3 more feet than what I just gave you.
Yes, but that could be the difference between a ballot box and a road, right? When you're driving by, are you on the road or are you at the ballot box?
Well, of course, that can be the difference between a ballot box and a road, but that doesn't mean that the data set is completely irrelevant just because so we can agree on 6 feet. Well, I'll meet you on that one. Say fine, 6 feet. You're telling me that someone is going to go by over 5 ballot boxes in their daily routine, day in and day out, at all hours of the day and night, and constantly come within this 6 feet ping of that ballot box over and over and over again. And you're going to find that happen over an extremely large sample of people in a very select group of metropolitan areas that all just so happens to be critical for the election. That is so far beyond the pale of anything that is even remotely tolerable to me as a proposition.
I will
Like,
also add on among the fact that these are already like ballot box areas tend to be already highly trafficked areas where it is in fact
yeah,
normal that people are in the area. All right. I will also add on that 2,000 Mules did never said at least that they eliminated, for example, election officials, election workers. From these lists, and it would make sense if election workers are going around these polls. So we don't know how many of these people are election workers that you're tracking.
okay, so on that specifically, it would make sense if election workers visited the boxes, went on a route visiting every box within a certain area, and they went to those boxes once every 2 3 days, maybe each box once a day at most, in an extremely vote, like at a time where they expect the most votes to come in. That's not what the data that the film put forward shows for any
Okay,
of
and
the people that
either way, I've already explained to you how the actual data set has been at least semi-invalidated, but we can move on from there. Geo-tracking alone is very circumstantial. Do you have any actual evidence of voter fraud? Or does 2,000 Mules? What's your next point from 2,000 Mules? How about that one?
Well, we're not done discussing 2,000 mules.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, what's your next point from 2,000 Mules?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't agree with trying to just move past the geosynchronous data point, because we have not settled this issue at all, in my mind. Like,
well, considering one of us has evidence and one of us does not, there's not really much we can do there. So,
your evidence consists entirely of expert testimony in fields that you have no credential in whatsoever. So now
my evidence consists of research in the field, actually, not testimony, research.
Okay.
Is citing a research
paper.
That
research? Who reported the research?
Chen
the experts
Qian,
right?
Kyan. He's a professor, but he was talking about a research paper.
Okay, yes, but the point I'm making here is who put together the research paper? People who did the research, right? Therefore, experts. Therefore, the research paper is by definition their testimony. Just because they wrote it down and committing their names to it, my point stands. You're relying on the word of experts.
Are you relying on anything other than your own word? Saying that. I mean,
I literally just said that. In the film, they have data experts and they have people who work with this technology say this is completely feasible. Like, so
does it say the margin of error? Do they say the margin of error?
The margin of error for what?
For the location. Because that's what I'm really holding you up on here, is the margin of error on this location data.
You're saying the margin of error in terms of the distance from, like, the margin of error for the distance of a ping?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do they say the margin of error is?
If I remember in the movie, oh God, what did the guy say? I think he said that those pings are routinely, oh, what did he say? My memory's not the best for little details like this. I believe he said a smaller number than I gave you, or excuse me, a bigger number than I gave you. I think he went all the way up to 3.5.
3.5? Again, I'm not really seeing a source there. But either way, it's still within the margin of error.
I can't remember it. I can't lie. Like I said, I'm gonna tell you right now, sometimes I do not remember numbers the best. It might have been different than that.
But anyways, I can find. Let me give me 2 seconds. And I can find the actual study that what I was citing earlier came from. It's just it's links right here. All right, I'm just gonna open the link, and I will share this on my stream once it loads. And if you can open that up and see it, then we should be good. Hello. Try that again.
Bisky, you are too precious.
Okay. All right, this paper explores network-wide cellular data localizing using fingerprints created in the angle measured in measurements enabled by 5G. Our key data is binning-based fingerprinting technique that leverages multipath propagation to create fingerprint vectors based on the angles of arrival of signals along multiple paths at each other. Yada yada yada. The authors are from Purdue, AT&T Labs Research. Purdue and AT&T Labs Research.
Okay, I just looked up my own to double check myself here. The number he gives in the documentary is 40 feet, so I was off by quite a bit.
Okay,
And then,
so that's even larger than my margin of error. So
and then your research paper against that says 23 to 40 feet.
Yeah, so again, we are in agreement. We should be in agreement at least at this point that the location data does not actually show people at ballot drop boxes. Correct?
No, we don't agree with that, because just because that margin of error exists does not negate the relevance of the pattern of travel of these people. And
No,
you
I'm
keep
not saying that they weren't near the drop boxes. You cannot prove that they were at the drop boxes. Correct. Right?
except for where the pings are backed up with all of the video footage that they demonstrated. They've had multiple pings that they said, this is the ping that coincides with this video of this guy coming to this ballot drop box and shoveling in like a handful of ballots.
Great.
So
Given that,
only the ones that are backed up by video, I can say only those.
okay, and approximately how many videos of this did you see in the documentary?
Oh, how many did they actually play? Well,
Yeah.
they did that thing where they put one by one and then another one and then they zoomed out, and this screen, I mean,
Okay, so how many videos at the
but how many individual videos do
yes.
they have?
The zoom out is not you looking. Wait a second. The zoom out is not you being able to see the video. Therefore, you can't see the evidence. Therefore, we can't use that evidence. We can use the evidence we can see. So, how many videos did you see of people at the Dropbox? Approximately.
Okay, hold up. The only evidence we can use is the evidence we can see. You didn't see them do the research on that paper. You weren't out in the field with them, but you're still citing the research paper. Just like I'm citing the testimony of the people who did the Freedom of Information requests for all these surveillance footage, I'm trusting them. So if you can trust the people who wrote that paper, why can't I trust the people who made this documentary?
I mean, I think it's a little bit iffy to trust a convicted criminal of fraud on the basis of this, but whatever. Either way, how many videos were there? How about that? Let's go from there.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Just a rough guess, at least.
Around a dozen.
Around a dozen. Okay. And do you want to know what none of those videos show?
Sure.
The same person at multiple drop boxes. There's not a single video in the documentary that shows the same person at multiple drop boxes.
Where are you getting that?
From the documentary. And from other sources that have watched it and fact-checked it and said it does not show the same person.
So now you're saying that just because they did not specifically demonstrate this in the documentary, that none of the surveillance shows exists?
No, I'm not saying that is in no way what I'm saying. I
Okay.
have said, sure, whatever, that these surveillance videos, sure, that they exist. What is not shown ever in the documentary is the same person at two surveillance or at two drop boxes. And that is their big claim here, right? You would assume that if they have this big claim and evidence of it, they would show at least a little bit of something. Where they did
Yeah,
not show the same person ever.
you make a compelling point there. I'll grant you that one. I think they definitely should have shown video that says, all right, we have this guy that came to all these locations, and here's all the video. We were able to get this many videos of him at different drop boxes. I agree they should have done that.
Okay, so that would insinuate that there isn't actually evidence of these specific people at all of these drop boxes, right? Because this was also not a research paper where you could go through and see every data point and all of that. Research papers, you can go in, you can look at how the data was collected, you can look at the results, and then you can look at conclusions and possibly policy guideline depending on the paper. This is just the documentary. So the documentary is all we have to go on here. Documentary, we cannot see any examples of people going to multiple ballot boxes.
So, I mean, yeah, I can't argue with any of that, except the only point I could raise in counter to that is it's not technically true that the documentary is the only thing we have to go on, because the documentary didn't create all this surveillance footage. It's government footage, and the cell phone data is data that you can purchase.
What I'm saying, though, what I'm saying is that a research paper will have their methodology, it will show all of the data, and it
Yeah,
will
no,
also
I
show
understand
conclusions.
you're making
We
there.
cannot see all of the data in this one unless we're going to go pay for all of it, which is unreasonable. So, all that we have to go on, based on the 2,000 Mules allegations, would be 2,000 Mules. Like, we have to treat it with the validity that it stands with.
Yes, that all sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, so do you have any other points you would like to use from 2,000 Mules?
No other. Well, no. We if yeah, we can let that one. We can let 2,000 Mules, because I mean, because that really is the main point. That is their smoking gun, to quote them.
Yep, their smoking gun that was not shown. So,
Well, again, I was quoting them.
yes, I know. So, what other reasons would you say that the election was fraudulent in some manner?
The other one, this is the one that I've personally held up as the main concern I have. I'm going to drop it in your chat here. This article talks about the. Why is it not? Darn it! 1 second.
If it's not letting you post the link, you can whisper it to me and I'll post it. But it should be letting you.
Oh no! Yeah, there it goes. I didn't actually have a copy. Okay, so that article is talking about this study into the data from the ballot drops, which were disproportionately favorable for Biden.
Let me just pull up the study or the article real quick.
Yep.
I'm gonna pop it on my stream as well so the rest of you guys can see it. All right. So, what specifically in this article are you going to be talking about?
So the article, like I said, I also sent you a second link there. This article is just kind of a it's not impartial. The article has obvious bias where the study attempts to be impartial, but it's talking about this study, which is the second link I sent you there, and the study is a statistical analysis of the data from the election night, and it uses comparisons from previous elections, and it's talking about how mathematically these vote dumps are statistically impossible. And this has always been the thing that I looked at to say, yeah, this is obviously fraudulent.
Okay, so I will start with this. Still shows no actual evidence of fraud that you can pin on someone. But I will also go on to show. Let me find. I have a bunch of tabs open, so let me find a specific. I have a study that looks at these statistical claims, which is the same as the statistical claims that this article or that this this article would be making. So Biden share of the U.S. counties are not anonymous. I don't know if this does that research look at the counties that he won, or is it not about? It looks at counties that he won. What does it say about that?
I do not know exactly what it says about them. I was not able to read through the entire thing, top to bottom.
Okay, so you're citing an article that you haven't actually read. Okay. Anyways,
I skimmed it, and listen. Are you trying to have a good faith debate, or are you trying to sound like a wise ass?
no, I'm trying to have a good faith debate. I'm just I gave you time to prepare, so I expected you to come with some solid facts, evidence that you can talk about.
See,
which
and this comes okay. Listen, we need to have a quick. What's the word I'm looking for here? A quick framing of this discussion. All of the evidence that's been presented by my side up until now has been either refuted, as your side would say, debunked, or dismissed and further investigation rejected by the courts. There has been a consistent demonization and direct censoring of anyone who's publicly looked into these issues or tried to spread information about it on social media. I'm aware that I don't have any hard knife with fingerprints, chalk marks on the ground evidence. I don't have it, and I'm willing to bet that if it does exist, only a few people do have it. That's not the crux of the argument that people on my side are making. The crux of the argument is that if this election was legitimate, and if it really was 100% on the up and up, why is debate being shut down? Why are the cases being thrown out instead of properly adjudicated and discovery gone into and brought forth to their final conclusion? Because that's what everyone should want. If the election was actually 100% legitimate and on the up and up, people should be willing to see the adjudication through to the end.
I can actually explain to you very quickly why the adjudication is commonly shut down. Okay. I don't know if you can see my screen right now. I'm about to click to this screen. This website shows every single court case challenging elections. Okay, and you can refine it to November 2020 after the election, and it shows that the cases were either closed because of a lack of standing, because the people putting forth the case did not have evidence of it, and that is how a case works, is you have to have evidence, or they were fully examined and it was found that the results were valid. Yeah. But many of these were fully looked into. Many of these went through the court process and were found to be completely valid.
Many. Let me ask you about one specifically. In the court case, which was alleging that the state of Pennsylvania had conducted its election improperly and therefore their votes were invalid, their electoral votes were invalid. The case was thrown out, even though it is public knowledge, publicly accepted, no one refutes this, that the Secretary of State changed the election laws before the election without the approval of the legislator, blatantly against the state's constitution. Obviously, the Trump team had standing for that suit to be seen through to its final conclusion and ultimately the vote overturned. Why didn't that happen? Because
the case did not challenge the law. The case challenged the election. You have to challenge the law if you want the law to be challenged. That is how it works. That is how courts work.
The election.
And also, I don't know this specific one, but what I will say is that many people, many places, including our federal government, consistently has used the state of emergency to change laws. This is not solely election based, and it is not always unconstitutional.
No, I'll definitely concede that. It's not always unconstitutional. It depends on what the state's constitution specifically says. Pennsylvania's state constitution made a change in the election law within, so I can't remember the exact number of days, but within so many of days, it made it unconstitutional. If the law was changed unconstitutionally before the election was held, that inherently invalidates the election results.
Legally, it does not.
Okay, well, I don't know how to
And show me how the changing of the election laws created actual voter fraud, right? Because I would assume that you're alleging that there was fraud in the election. How does changing the law create fraud? Whether or not the law change was legal.
You're
talk about fraud.
I never said they did. I'm not talking specifically about fraud, and nowhere in the build up to this debate did I ever promise you that I was specifically going to talk about fraud. Fraud is one of the things we're discussing. But the way an election is conducted on the government side is 100% also within the realm of something that needs to be discussed in this issue. You can't just say, oh, well, he doesn't have proof of voter fraud, so the entire thing is a closed matter. No. Who counts the vote matters, if not more, just as much as who votes.
Who counts the vote? We can talk about that one. You want to talk about who counts the votes? We can talk about
the state of Pennsylvania right now, aren't we? And we're talking about how they changed against their own constitution. They changed the rules about who is allowed to vote and how the vote is counted prior to the election without the proper number of days or the proper authorization channels giving the go-ahead. That inherently, ethically speaking, maybe not under the strict word of the law as it exists in that state, but ethically speaking, that invalidates that state's electoral votes.
Okay, ethically, we're going to disagree on a lot of things. So, how specifically was the counting changed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How specifically was the counting of the votes changed?
You're asking me to remember details from...
I'm asking you to remember a state that you specifically brought up the law change of. I feel like you should know the law change that you are specifically citing. Yes, I think that is fair.
Please stop interrupting me. You are asking me to recall a detail from a case that I was looking into when it was going on and shortly after it concluded. One which I did not go back and read all of the details of again in the 2 days since you announced to me we were doing this.
I'm not talking about the case. I'm talking about the state law. And I'm talking about how the state law changed, because you were specifically saying that the state law changed and that makes it unethical. But I would like to know how the state law changed exactly. Or even in general, what changed about the state law.
How the state law changed is what the case was about. So when I say them, it's meant to be understood as one and the same. I do not remember the exact change. That is what I am telling you.
Okay, so again, you're citing something that you don't know the details of.
I'm citing something that I can't immediately spout the details of, but I'm also citing something which is publicly available, and you or your audience is free to go fact check me.
We are free, but this is a debate. This is a debate. You chose to have the time to prepare, so I expected you to be able to prepare.
Do you have a life?
Yeah, I do. I actually do a lot of things. But when someone asks for a debate and asks for time to be prepared, I will also be prepared. All right, so let's look at the act. Nah, actually, workout. I don't think this is right. This is 2019. So never mind. Not gonna work.
Pennsylvania Legislator Act 77.
That was a 2019 act. It's not gonna be a 2020 act, and I would assume that within a year will be fine. But we can also look into this. Stream viewers, can you guys see this all right? All right, hereby enacts as follows. The General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania says that for a qualified absentee elector, in the case of an elector who has been issued a current and valid driver's license, the elector's driver's license number, or if they don't have a driver's license, their social security number, and some sort of photo ID is necessary.
I mean, Kate, the stream can hear you. You can just say that. Are you going to say it?
Well, how the law was changed was to allow for ballots to be counted after the election. Ballots
What?
received after the election were allowed to be counted.
That's
So
right.
ballots postmarked by the election date, then that were received later.
Post election date, so after.
No.
Received after.
Received after. I'm asking, were they postmarked by the election date? Did they have to be postmarked?
No.
It does matter. Did they have to be postmarked?
According to the law, and you can go to NCSL.
Not according to the law.
And look up U.S. Supreme Court allows Pennsylvania to count ballots received after election.
So what is the Supreme Court case? Because it says that's a Supreme Court thing. What's the Supreme Court case?
Oh, are you posting this chat?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Major features of the act include. Yeah, Wargoat, all of that checks out with what I remember about the case. Thank you.
Okay, so it said that the absentee submission deadline is 8 p.m. the day of election, which is generally when polls close as well, correct?
No, this says up to 3 days after.
The receiving or
ballots received up to 3 days after election.
right? I'm talking about when the person actually voted, right? So that's why I'm asking when the postmark happens.
You're not listening, Gore. It doesn't matter when it's postmarked because the law says, or it said before the new law was put into place, it said that votes had to be in before the election was concluded. It didn't matter when they were postmarked. That's an irrelevant, it's not included in the law. It matters when the ballot is actually received. And it's that way in a lot of states. For example, here in Washington, it does not matter when your ballot is postmarked. If it does not arrive on time for the election, it is not counted. That's how it works in a lot of states. Then Pennsylvania said, oh, it doesn't matter when the ballot gets here, even if it's 3 days late, we're going to count it anyways. And they changed the law against their own constitution.
All right, so I'm not talking about the state constitution. I'm talking about the actual case here. So, I currently have all of the state laws up, considering you just claimed that this implied that this isn't a very common thing.
I didn't say it wasn't a very common thing. What I said was it's that way there and it's that way in my state. That is what I said.
Okay, so what does your state have to do with this? If I can just bring in every other state that includes
Legal precedent.
Okay, California, postmarked by the election day and received no later than 7 days after the election. Legal precedent.
Okay, so the different states do things different ways.
That's why your state is not relevant here. That's why I just said that. It's because you're acting like Washington State is legal precedent for Pennsylvania.
Realizes that courts use legal precedent set by other states all the time, right?
Courts use legal precedent set by other states
All the time.
Yes, and your legal precedent from Washington is different than the legal precedent in many other states. So you just citing Washington doesn't really matter here.
Irrelevant.
It does not matter. What's your next point, Gore?
My next point is you may think that this is unethical, right? But it doesn't do anything that would like nullify the actual votes that people cast, right? So people still cast these votes. This is still what people voted for. So even if the law changed, this is what people voted for, and it could be reasonably assumed that had the law not changed, people would have followed the laws of the time, considering they followed the laws of this law, like the rules of this law.
You don't understand, Gore, how concerning it is that a state changed its laws on how to do its election right before a presidential election.
I mean, it's not concerning.
What?
It's not concerning considering COVID-19 pandemic was vast among the entire United States, and we were still dealing with that in a very serious capacity. And many states already had rules regarding the people congregating, and an election site would warrant a congregation of people. So in many cases, there were pre-existing rules from the COVID-19 pandemic that would mean that election offices or places to go vote in person would have to be extremely changed and thus also slowed down in order to actually be allowed by the rules in place in the state.
Well,
I mean, that law, Wargoat, was not the unconstitutional thing. I think what they're mainly talking about here has been the Supreme Court case, which is not their law, it is a Supreme Court case. So.
A Supreme Court case is equivalent to law.
Yes, but Wargoat is citing a law that was put forward in 2019. You guys primarily have been citing a Supreme Court case, right? And you can't equate the two when we're talking about things like Wargoat mentioning that the law was proposed in 2019.
When the court case is about the law in question.
No, what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is Wargoat is saying that the law was proposed before the COVID-19 pandemic. It was proposed in 2019, right? I'm saying that the court case was different, and also the law and the court case did not take into account COVID, whereas first of all, they probably should have. Second of all, there were other rules at play in the state at the time, as there was in every state.
Just in 2019, COVID wasn't even a thing, unless you're suggesting
until late.
They had.
Or no, yeah, actually, it really wasn't.
That.
That's thing one. Thing two, a law being proposed and a law actually being adopted are very far from the same thing. And what I am arguing is that the fact that the law was changed unconstitutionally makes the election, which was altered by the law directly. I mean, there's no fucking question that law being in place swung the state for Biden.
What makes you
If
think
any
that?
of the vote, what makes you?
Do you think that because it allowed more Democrats to vote, or do you think that because it actually changed the
No,
minds of
I
the
think
people?
that no. I think that because if you cut the voting off on the day of the election, like the old law said,
Which they do.
and ignored all the votes that came in afterwards, Biden does not win the state.
You cannot
If
vote.
I remember correctly.
By this law, you cannot vote after election day. What this is actually saying is that you can vote on election day, but you still cannot vote after election day.
Then where was that? Which one of you? Where
The
did I
Supreme
hear?
Court ruled that they can receive elections that are postmarked by 8 p.m. on election night. They can be received and counted if they arrive no later than 5 p.m. on November 6th. But they must still be postmarked by election day. You still have to vote by election day.
Okay, see, and that's what I'm saying. The old law. I feel like I'm going in circles with this guy.
You're going in circles because you're implying that people shouldn't be able to vote, which is just inherently anti-democratic and really what the U.S. was founded upon.
No,
That
I'm implying
is
that people
not what
should
he
be
said.
there on the day to vote in person themselves. If you don't care enough about the course of your country to be there on voting day with your ID ready to go, you obviously don't give that much of a damn.
What happens if you're a blue-collar worker working 12-hour days on election day?
I support
How are you gonna
making
show up to
Election Day
vote?
a holiday. That's thing one.
Great,
Thing
but that
two,
doesn't exist right now.
millions of them still manage to do it. So don't use the what about the blue collar worker on such and such day when literally the overwhelming majority of people do just that.
What
They
about
either
people
take
who
the
are
day
at
off,
college in
do
another
it,
state?
college in another state. Well, it's very funny. We happen to have an absentee ballot system for them, don't we?
Great, so you do support absentee ballots.
No, I'm saying we have it. I don't support it. I'm saying it exists.
Why don't you support it? For people like, for example, right? For people who are in college out of state, and for, let's say, military workers,
I
military
think
members.
military might be one of the. I think a paper absentee ballot requiring military ID and deployment information would be an acceptable measure to allow our boys in uniform to vote. And I would because sometimes they might be stationed someplace where the mail is not going to reach them very soon. I would also be comfortable with them having the sole ability to have their votes counted after the election because it makes sense when you're talking about chain of custody having to go from one country to the next. It's a reasonable accommodation for the boys in uniform. Outside of that, I think that the college thing, I think that should be very hard to get an absentee ballot. I think you should have to demonstrate that you cannot make it home, and you should have to demonstrate proof of residency in the state that you are supposedly attending college. It is very easy to get an absentee ballot in some states, depending on their rules. The reason I support making it harder to vote is because if you actually, it's a principle thing. And so if you want to have a debate about this, we're going to have a debate about how we think a country should run itself. But I do not think it should be easier to vote. I want voter ID. I think voting in person should be a thing. And absentee ballots, the reason I'm against them and mail-in voting in general is because it's the easiest form of voting to create mass fraud with.
So first of all, there's not evidence in the United States supporting that with our current system. Second of all, absentee ballots allow people to actually take time to fill out their ballots and not feel the pressure while filling out their ballots, possibly avoid pressure from the people around them while they're actually filling out their ballots. It allows people to actually vote the way that they wish. Also, I'm just going to make note, this isn't going to be part of our debate because I don't think it's worth getting into tonight. I'm just going to make note that I think that everyone who wants to vote should be able to vote, and making that easy is not a problem.
Well, you can choose not to include that in the debate tonight if you want. We inherently disagree on that.
Well, we can go back to the fact that there is not evidence of widespread voter fraud via vote by mail in the United States.
You say that, but then someone puts forth hard statistical analysis, which is evidence of exactly that, and you say it's not evidence.
Evidence of voter fraud would include reliable cases where a vast number of people are being prosecuted for this, because people generally are prosecuted for voter fraud. There are people almost every election that are prosecuted for voter fraud. Probably every election, actually.
There are people who are arrested and prosecuted every day for drug crimes. We really shouldn't have a drug epidemic in this country.
Drugs should also be
That's what
legal.
you're saying. That's the argument you're making.
Also, votes are very heavily scrutinized. Votes are very heavily regulated during the counting process.
Do not move to the next point.
No, I'm talking about voting. Voting and drugs are two very different things, right? Drugs are not heavily scrutinized when people stop. You interrupted me. Drugs are not heavily scrutinized when, for example, someone is doing it within their own home, right? There's rules on where the cops can go, where the cops can look. Whereas a vote is scrutinized by the counters. All right, there is a process to verify that the vote is valid. Every vote is validated. And if there seems to be an issue, the person is prosecuted.
And what do you have to say about the many, many thousands of sworn affidavits that say that voter verification was basically non-existent at many of these tabulation centers?
If those were sworn affidavits, there should be proof of such action, which there is not. Perjury is a crime. People do commit perjury.
Crazy, just like they also commit voter fraud. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and people do get prosecuted for perjury, and my guess is those people are going to get prosecuted for perjury. If they went on to say these things in court,
they signed the affidavits 2 years ago. No one's prosecuted them yet.
You act like our court system is fast. That's just an inherent flaw.
You act like the court system is infallible. And
no, I understand it can make mistakes, but I also understand the fact that the majority of fraud cases that go in front of a court are actually found to be not proven. They're just claimed. Someone claims that this person committed fraud, sends them to court, and then it is not proven because the fraud did not happen. And there are plenty of cases where fraud did happen that they are convicted on.
Again, I don't know. I don't know what to say when I say this is something that is heavily indicative of fraud and it needs to be thoroughly investigated.
And it has been. That's the thing. I support investigating it, but it has been investigated many of times.
Clearly, okay. It has been investigated. I'm not going to argue that no investigation took place. My argument is insufficient investigation took place. And for precedent of that, okay, the Democrats had concerns about Donald Trump's election because he conspired with Russia, Russian bots, all that. They used a piece of evidence that was fabricated by Hillary Clinton's campaign to launch a 2.5 year congressional probe into Trump that turned up absolutely nothing. Trump's election claims have statistical evidence, video footage coinciding with geosync data, thousands of sworn affidavits, and an incredibly impressive pile of circumstantial evidence. And we get a couple of weeks of investigation of all that. You couldn't possibly be begin to thoroughly and honestly investigate all of that in 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, pretty much everyone was done talking about the election.
No,
it did
these
not get
investigations went on for much longer than 2 weeks, first of all. And second of all, we're not talking about Hillary Clinton. And third of all, what would you consider adequate investigation?
What would I consider adequate investigation?
Mhm.
I would say when every affidavit has been investigated, when
Great, that they all have.
when everyone in every surveillance video that has been brought into question is interviewed, when every single ballot is checked against a voter signature and address that is deemed to be valid, when the statistical outliers have been proven to be through legitimate votes, when the issues of constitutionality in multiple states and the legitimacy of the election has been thoroughly litigated and not dismissed out of court because lack of standing, which I hold in extreme contempt, as well as many other lawyers, when all of that is seen through to a conclusion that takes longer than, fine, a couple months after the investigation, I will consider it thoroughly investigated. And it doesn't matter that we're not talking about Hillary Clinton right now. Again, it's relevant to the subject matter in that it is relevant in nature. We're talking
How
about.
is Hillary Clinton relevant to the 2020 elections?
I never said Hillary Clinton specifically was relevant to the 2020 election. I said that the investigation by Congress into Trump's election was relevant to the 2020 election because it shows a willingness to investigate election issues when it's a Republican who's getting elected, but then Biden gets elected and just nothing.
To be perfectly honest with you, Congress doesn't matter. Congress doesn't have judicial powers in that sense. What does have judicial powers is court. I can agree with you that Hillary should have been investigated more, and Trump actually probably is investigated the perfect amount. You probably don't agree on that one. But at the end of the day, the Hillary investigation is not the 2020 election investigation. You are just citing a completely different issue, right? You're citing an issue that is not relevant to actually the 2020 election and whether it was legitimate, which is what this debate is about. Okay, so let's stay on topic a little bit. Let's talk about a 6-month audit by a private company in Arizona of their election results, right? And this private company, the founder of the company, had already stated that he believes there was election fraud. He was hired by the GOP-run state Senate, and they confirmed the election results in Arizona. Along with that, there was multiple hand counts and a forensic audit of voting machines that also confirmed the results of the Arizona election. Okay? There's 3 different audits in Georgia that found no evidence of wrongdoing.
Is it a link? Are you going to post it? Or
I just posted a link. I just posted a link from a Steven Crowder episode where he actually did on-the-ground research and found that several of the supposed voters that had voted, all of these addresses were actually invalid and no one lived in these places because a lot of them were actually vacant lots and these people were not real.
So he had hands on the ballots, and then he looked from the address of the ballots, and then went to these addresses.
A private citizen can't get the actual physical ballot. You have to go by the voter roll.
You have to go by the roll.
The voter roll. Okay, and do we know that those people voted in the election?
Yes, because the voter roll says they did.
The voter roll, the registration roll, or the actual voter roll?
No, the voter roll for that election.
Let me just check if those are actually public, because in many cases I believe they are not.
Yeah, see, Wargoat knows what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Wargoat, you've been extremely impartial and even-handed in your comments this entire thing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, just like he also said there was evidence of mail-in ballots.
Yes, there was evidence of mail-in ballots from people who were dead and not accurate addresses. Yes, there was some of that, and those were prosecuted. Actually, fun fact.
Yeah, just like he also said there was evidence of mail-in ballots from people who were dead and not accurate addresses. Yes, there was some of that, and those were prosecuted. Actually, fun fact.
Well, Well, I'm very glad to hear that. So here's my question to you. Well, which ones were prosecuted? The ones in Arizona? Because when Crowder called Nevada with the fraudulent votes, the election commission in Nevada said we literally don't have a mechanism for doing anything about this.
That is most likely inaccurate. We all know that people who answer the phones are usually idiots, not gonna lie. But I know that there was, I want to say it's like 470 something that was either in 2020 or within the last 20 years. Trying to see if I can pull up the actual count here. It should work. We'll have this count. Just wait 2 seconds. All right. All right. Anyways, I'm still looking for the article, but it is like 470 something people prosecuted for election fraud, which would indicate that people are being prosecuted for this crime, right? It's not like people are just going free.
Well, it's not like the people who again have been caught and investigated are just going free. Again,
What you're saying is still standing on a distinct lack of evidence. That's the thing. Is nothing that you have said is really actual evidence. And I would assume, considering your claim is against the traditional narrative, that you would have some actual reason for that other than circumstantial evidence.
And again, when you come up with a bunch of hard data and a bunch of video footage and statistical impossibilities, how is it fair to call all of those things circumstantial evidence?
Well, because the video evidence, at least every video that I have seen, has been shown through state law and through officials speaking on the matter that they were actually congruent with the law, that they were, for example, the suitcases were actually secure election drop box or secure ballot boxes used for the holding the ballots prior to the counting. This has been proved time and time again.
Yes, they proved an igloo cooler that you can see on camera is in fact an igloo cooler. They proved that is a secure election ballot box. Yes, sure, got
it. Oh my god, it is a secure ballot election drop box.
You're asking me to ignore my lying eyes.
What I'm asking you to do is look at the totality of the situation and look at, for example, the laws of the states that a lot of these videos are coming out of, right? You can look at the statements made by everything. You can look at the entire, 8-hour video footage of the one that was called Suitcases that shows that that's not what they were and that they were not tampered with. You can fully look into this, or you can watch your 15-second clip. Have you seen more than a 15-second clip of each of these? Maybe 1 minute clip.
No, in terms of the specific instance that I just cited you, no, I have not ever seen the full video of that. But again, in terms of me saying these are votes in an igloo cooler, why do I need more than a 15? That's my specific claim. You're saying that all the votes were brought in official secure election boxes. I'm saying I saw a video where they came in a styrofoam igloo cooler. You're telling me that I didn't see the
Send me the video.
I saw.
Send me the video. We'll show it on screen.
I don't have it on hand. It's in fact, it's one of the ones that Crowder plays in that episode that Kate posted. If that's even the full
episode. Well, we're not going through an hour long episode.
No, I don't expect you to. Yeah, it is still on YouTube.
But yeah.
Or no, that's not the one. This is the one where he goes state to state.
So,
But
we
again,
can.
it well, let me just say that it seems that you are intent on demanding of me hard physical evidence, which I understand. Extraordinary claims, extraordinary evidence. It's a reasonable position to have.
No, extraordinary claims, reasonable evidence. But yes, continue.
Well, thanks for the bone. I don't have it. I wish I did. Again, my position is not anything. I how do I articulate this so that I'm consistent? How do I say this? I am not saying that it is impossible that Biden won. My position has always been I don't think he has, because of all of these anomalies, many, or I would say most of which have not been thoroughly investigated. And you keep coming back to this demanding of evidence when my argument has never hinged on we have the proof. That's never been my argument. That's never been my position. So really, I feel like you came here wanting to hold me to a standard that I never even claimed I was willing to meet.
No, I came here to debate you, and I'm debating at my standard. If you can't meet a standard of having evidence, that is on you. But I do want to introduce you to two logical fallacies. All right. The first one is called the logical fallacy of hasty generalization, um, and it involves a claim based on a few examples rather than substantial proof, which is what most of the argument against certifying or like the validity of the election is. And there is also this argument called, where is it? The appeal to ignorance, which states that it must be true because it has not been proven false. And considering you won't take any actual like hard statistics and data and laws on this, you seem to be falling into both of these logical fallacies.
But the same could be said for you.
Really? The appeal to ignorance, it must be true because it has not been proven false. No, it has been proven true. That is with all of the evidence that I've shown you, right? And hasty generalization, a claim based on a few examples rather than substantial proof. All of my things go along with many different audits. And I have also fully admitted that some people will get away with it, but that many people are caught for fraud.
You say that many people will get away with it.
No, I said some people will get away with it and many people are caught.
Okay, I mixed up your words there. Fine. You say that some people will get away with it. Why is it so hard to believe that people are getting away with a criminal conspiracy? I'm not understanding.
Are we talking like a vast nationwide criminal conspiracy like the one alluded to in 2000 Mules? Or maybe even directly stated?
I'm not sure how big it goes, and I would want to do a very thorough head counting and seeing an analysis of individual actors on a bio by bio basis to see whether or not I think they were actually involved. But do I think that people who are at high levels of government collude and engage in bribery, blackmail, coercion, things like that to make things happen that are not above ground? Yeah, absolutely, I believe that. And the point I'm making here is that you are discounting that possibility out of hand because, oh, it's been proven. Like, yeah, so if my argument has any grounds, then how can you trust any of those things that have quote unquote been proven? Oh, the cops investigated themselves. They said they didn't do it. Big shocker. And you say you've disproven this or you've discredited that or you've debunked that. There is no counter that you've given me for the statistical evidence, for the mathematical impossibilities All you've said is that's not proof of fraud. Well, it's proof that there's an issue because the numbers don't lie. If we have something happen that is statistically impossible, it proves there needs to be an investigation.
And there
At least
was.
in
That's the
my
thing.
opinion.
I support the investigations on it. I every step of the way have supported investigations into the election. And then
And
I
now we're
accept
back
the
to the
results
point.
of the investigations because it has been investigated.
And now we're back to the point where you asked me earlier, what do I think is a thorough and complete investigation? And I and half the country, roughly, thinks that the investigation was not thorough or complete.
Okay, and then you said longer than a few months, and I named multiple examples where investigations went on longer than a few months.
Which
You know,
ones?
one thing he's right about.
Mhm.
I have a tendency to speak in hasty generalizations that often come back to bite me in the ass. Look,
Which ones?
allow me to correct myself. The matter of time spent on investigation is not the sole factor that has relevance to whether or not the investigation was actually done thoroughly and properly. There's so many investigations that spent years on them and never came to the obvious conclusion that someone found years later with a single piece of evidence. And there's investigations that go on for a week and they catch the guy red-handed, the whole nine. The investigations were not thorough. The investigations were not seen through to the satisfaction of the American people, which is who the investigations are supposed to be serving. And if half the country is unhappy with the thoroughness of an investigation, to me, that's at least highly indicative that the investigation was not satisfactory.
Where's your data that half the country is not satisfied? Because that
Oh, that's
I
readily
would argue.
available. Here. I'll Google that right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it might take me a second to find the actual hard data, but
Here, I have one for you. I have one for you. It says, this is from NPR. It says that 61% of the population overall accepts the results of the 2020 election. That is 96% Democrat and 24% Republican and 67% Independent. 34% do not accept the results and do not think that they are accurate. 72% Republican, 20% independent, and it doesn't show me the actual percentage because it's too small for Democrats.
I would also like to put in that National Public Radio, also known as NPR, is biased.
Yes, NPR is biased, but this is a poll, and it shows the percentage of each party specifically of its results.
It's been proven.
Okay, so again, I said 50% of people, correct?
Yes.
If 70%, actually 77% of Republicans think there was a problem, 20 to 30% of Democrats say there was a problem, and about 25 to 30% of independents think there was a problem. I'm not the best at math, but that comes pretty close to 50% of the general population.
On that same article, it says overall 36% said there was widespread fraud in the election, while 59% said there was not. In that same article, it totals them all out, considering that Democrats have a much larger population than Republicans. Republicans are not half of this country. It is half of the parties in existence. It's not half of this country.
Republicans are about a third of the country.
Mhm.
But again, we're talking about 77% of Republicans, 20 to 30% of Democrats. Again, I don't know how to cram those numbers together to get aggregate population. I'd have to consult a Goog about that. But my point stands that well over we'll say at least 40. We'll take it down 10% to be generous. 40% of the population thinks there was at least some issues with the 2020 election, and that doesn't merit an investigation that's more extensive than what we got.
We got many very extensive investigations. I still don't know exactly what you're asking for. Are you asking for a congressional investigation that doesn't actually do anything, or?
I've literally explicitly spelled out the criteria that
And then
I
you
want
went back and said that those criteria are not, because I told you the long investigation. I told you the multiple investigations. I told you these things, and then you went back and said that, oh no, but that's still not.
I've said the length of time. Yeah, the only thing I went back on was the specific length of time, and then I listed out step by step the criteria that I would want it to meet. When I said I want it to check the votes, when I said I wanted it to fully legislate out instead of dismissing calls of calls of constitutionality, when I said I want thorough investigations into the data sets and interviews of the people in the videos, all of that stuff. Remember, I said all that stuff is the standard I will want the investigations to meet.
Yeah, so that's what the audits do, and especially the hand recounts do in fact confirm the details on the vote on the ballots. I will fully concede to you that yes, possibly unconstitutional law changes did happen, but at the end of the day, that doesn't change the fact that the people voted for who the people voted for. You can say that it's unethical or whatever, but the people voted for who they voted for. Okay, and what's the third one? You said a third one, right?
Yeah, do you remember what the third one I just listed was? I'm sorry, I'm not gonna lie to you. I got distracted by reading your chat.
It might have been two in terms of the like details on the ballots. So, but yeah, like the only thing that doesn't fit is the constitutionality. In which case, all of the states that did not change their laws directly prior and against their constitution should be fine, which is, I believe, every state other than Pennsylvania.
I am personally unaware of any I am personally unaware of any legislation regarding constitutionality of election laws other than Pennsylvania's.
Okay, so the only one that would be called into question then, given your own definition here, would be Pennsylvania. And that would still not win the election.
Well, yeah, if it was just Pennsylvania, again, I never said that was the I never said that Pennsylvania's court case was the crux of my entire issue with the election.
Yes, but what we've established, what I have established here is that there was very in-depth investigations. The details of the ballots were confirmed, okay? And the only thing that you had left on your list was the constitutionality of the laws, which only applies to Pennsylvania. So do you accept the results in all the other states other than Pennsylvania?
Hold on. When did you prove that the details of all the ballots were confirmed? Because
that is what happened in the audits and during the hand recounts. That is what they do.
And
that is
obviously, and let me make my point here. In some states, they did that. They did hand recounts or audits, and clearly they didn't catch everything because Crowder, a comedian, went back after said audits and found fraudulent votes. So did the audits really do their job? You can't say that all the votes were on the up and up, and then earlier in this very same discussion, you've conceded that instances of voter fraud were found and prosecuted. And then go back and say, well, these audits happened, so obviously that means the vote was good. But you just conceded earlier.
I'm not saying that there is absolutely no chance that there was any fraud, but I'm saying these audits lead to the very strong conviction that there was not enough fraud to actually overturn the election.
Okay. And see, if we had an impartial audit that actually found a large degree of the fraudulent votes that clearly happened, well, with Crowder being able to pick a random sampling and find himself roughly 100, then I would buy the election results as being valid. If a third party had done the audit, an independent organization, and it wasn't a case of the government investigated the government and said the government did nothing wrong, then I would be willing to accept the audit.
What about the 6-month audit by a private company?
In what state?
Arizona.
Right now we're talking Arizona.
All of these things that I'm citing are from the 5 key states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Okay. Do you have that? Do you have that private company 6-month audit?
Let me go back to the article. Right now I just have it written down. But let me go back to the article.
Because it's news to me that it was a private company. What's the company? They weren't rigging the election, Wargoat. They were too busy buying themselves mansions.
In the spring, the Republican-dominated Arizona Senate hired Cyber Ninjas, a Florida cybersecurity firm with no prior election auditing experience, to review the 2020 election in Maricopa County. The audit has repeatedly been subject of misinformation online, despite the fact that previous recounts state that it found no wrongdoing, and it also found no wrongdoing. So it was by Cyber Ninjas.
Cyber Ninja. Okay. Well, then it sounds like I'm willing to concede the point on the audit of Arizona.
Yeah,
So,
and then the other audits
were legit.
The other audits were also all pushed by Republican lawmakers. So if anything, there should be a bias away from Biden there. But
I will say, though, it is kind of bad selection that they would pick a company with no previous audit experience. That's a little sus in and of itself.
I mean, they picked a company with cybersecurity experience, and considering that the cyber realm of voting has greatly increased since 2016, that makes sense. Most of the other election audits probably do not.
Yeah, I'm not saying the company selection is total. I'm not saying they selected a janitorial company or anything. I'm just saying it's a little bit odd to me that they would pick a company, because I'm sure there's cybersecurity companies that have done elections before. There's plenty of those.
Yeah, I think part of it also was the fact that the founder of the Cyber Ninja company has also previously stated that he believes in election fraud claims prior to doing this audit. So there should be a lot of bias in favor of Trump here, but it simply does not come out that way.
The fact that he came out showing that the election was fairly clean it proves one of two things: that the election was clean, or that someone got to the owner of that company. And that's tinfoil hat territory, which I obviously have no proof for, so I'm not going to assert that.
Yeah, but every single one of the audits in the 5 key states were pushed forward by Republican lawmakers, which to me would indicate that the only possible bias there would be for the Republicans, which is not what it turned out to be.
You're saying that's the case in all 5 states?
Yes.
That all 5 states had a Republican focused company, or not focused,
the only one that might not be is Michigan. I believe I read something about it, but I don't have it on hand about them doing the Republicans pushing that one. But Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona all had recounts or audits led by Republican lawmakers.
Okay. The audit being led by Republican lawmakers is not the same as the audit being done by people who were favorable to the Republican Party. One side of the political aisle calling for the audit is not the same as who actually does the audit.
No, I'm not saying it is, but I am saying that they were pushed for by these.
Oh yeah, well that's not.
By these.
We all knew that. Of course, it was the Republicans who pushed for the audits. Like, that's not news.
Let me see if this source that I have specifically says who did all of these audits. I'm not sure that I will though. So in Georgia, it was 3 separate audits. This doesn't say who ran it though. Michigan says it was a bipartisan effort with the most comprehensive post-election audit in the state's history. In Pennsylvania, it was a statewide risk-limiting audit, and it doesn't say exactly who did it. And same for Wisconsin, but an audit of the voting machines by the nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau commissioned by the Republican lawmakers. That's what ran it in Wisconsin. And an investigation by a conservative law firm in Wisconsin.
So Arizona and Wisconsin, from what I'm hearing, are the only states with audits that sound like they were not beyond question.
I mean, there's a bipartisan effort in Michigan, and it was the most comprehensive in the state's history. So I would also say that one probably was not biased, pretty clearly.
That's still a case of the government investigating the government, and I do not trust the government.
You don't trust the government officials who claimed election fraud?
Sorry, what was that?
You don't trust the government officials who claimed there was election fraud? Because those people were involved in this.
Nice little turnaround there. I don't trust the government to investigate the government, and I don't trust people who constantly do horrible shit to me and then turn around and tell me that everything is on the up and up. You know, for all his faults, would you agree that Donald Trump was a good president, good at governing?
Decently good.
Okay.
I don't think it was the best. I don't think it was the worst.
Reasonable. So the point I'm making here is Democrats have a history of screwing me and the people associated with me over, and they have, as a political force, they engage in deceit extensively more than the right.
To an extent.
So, what was that?
To an extent. Depends on the issue.
Okay, well, we disagree on the exact extent, but it sounds like you're not totally rejecting the premise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, generally speaking, I have a little bit more trust in government officials who don't constantly lie to me, as opposed to government officials that do constantly lie to me. And it was bipartisan in Michigan, where Republicans are a Republican in Michigan is basically a moderate Democrat anywhere else, bro. Come on.
Republicans
I'm
are
not saying
Republicans.
that makes them inherently untrustworthy, but it's just a remark.
Republicans are Republicans.
Well, that's
sorry.
not true at all, sir. Unlike gender, politics is on a spectrum. You can have centrist Republicans, center-right Republicans. You can have libertarian Republicans. I mean, politics truly is a spectrum.
Yes, but notice what you all said in that. What you said in all of those. Republican.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying there is a common denominator, but you said a Republican is a Republican. That's kind of like saying a dog is a dog. There's a big difference between a German Shepherd and a Chihuahua, my guy.
Yes, there's different types of Republicans. There's Republicans that believe different things. I think you and I are a perfect showing of that.
No argument there. Finally, something we agree on.
For once. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can see anything on the other states. Who ran their audits. Everything's coming up about Arizona, so I don't really want to deal with it right now. Dogs are fucking amazing. Let's be honest here. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to go over real quick. I'm just gonna say a couple claims, and I want you to either agree or disagree with them, just so I know if we have to cover them.
Okay.
Dominion voting machines. Did they play a part, or a big part? Did they change the election?
I don't know. That's my simple answer to that. I don't know.
Okay. Would you like to talk about it or move on to a different topic?
I would like a forensic audit of every single Dominion voting machine in this country based upon that. I can't remember. I think it was Wisconsin. A precinct had a machine switch 5,000 votes from Trump to Biden, and they said it was because the software of the machine had not been updated, if I recall correctly. And my question is, if that can happen to one machine, why can't it happen to every other Dominion voting machine in the country, of which there are tens of thousands? So,
I mean, that just comes down to technology will always have its, in my mind at least, that comes down to technology will always have its failures, and that one was corrected, as with all of the other technical failures that happened during the election, such as 100,000 votes being put in for Biden in, I believe it was Michigan, and then promptly being taken away because it was a technological mishap.
yeah, and like I said, I'm not. I said I don't know for a reason.
Yeah.
I think that the well, for example, the My Pillow guy, he came forward with a bunch of claims that he couldn't substantiate about the Dominion voting machines. A lot of them, by definition, circumstantial in evidence, or the evidence circumstantial in nature. And unfortunately, he didn't have any kind of a hard paper trail to back up a lot of the claims he made on Dominion. It's not one of the ones. It's not one of the ones that I would stake credibility on as being the thing.
Okay,
I think
that's
that
fair.
a forensic audit of machines should have been done.
And it was done in many cases, but
it was done in some of the states.
It was done in Arizona. I believe it was done in Georgia. It was done in Michigan. Those ones I know for a fact. Oh, and in Wisconsin, it was done. So, I'm gonna say a claim and what?
Oh, so that's three. Go ahead, move on. I was
Yeah.
saying, so that's 3 or 5.
It wasn't all of them, but yeah.
Four.
So I'm gonna say a claim. Just say whether you agree or disagree. During a 3-hour shutdown in the middle of the night on election night, 5 states found enough votes for Biden to win. Agree or disagree?
Well, that's an oversimplification of what factually happened. So,
okay, do you think that those votes were counted?
agree.
Do you think that those votes were counted / found / whatever you want to say during a 3-hour shutdown of the counting in these states?
well, some of those words mean very different things. So,
Do you think that the voting was stopped, or the counting was stopped, and these votes appeared?
Again, another appeared. I assume that they had the votes, with exclusion to the times that we see video footage of vans bringing in more votes after the count was stopped, with exclusion to those specific videoed instances.
Great. So, what state
the
do
votes
you
were already in the voting center?
What state do you believe that the voting was stopped in, or the counting was stopped in?
The counting was stopped in several states. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Pennsylvania, let's see, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin did not stop counting. Michigan did not stop counting. I don't know specifically about Pennsylvania. Wisconsin didn't stop counting. The administrator of Wisconsin Elections Commission said that our municipal and county clerks have worked tirelessly throughout the night to make sure every valid ballot has been counted and reported accurately. She said multiple times, that being one of them, that the voting did not stop and that they were working through the night. In Michigan, Tracy Wimmer, the director of media relations for the Michigan Secretary of State, said at no point has the counting process stopped since it began at 7 a.m. yesterday morning. This was said the day after elections.
Okay, that's informal testimony given. Is that formal testimony before a court, or is that in an interview?
No, but the courts never overruled anything that was like the courts never ruled that votes were found.
So, to cut to the chase here, I'm accusing them of lying based on the countering argument made in many sworn affidavits, which are held up to the legal standard of perjury, that says the counting did stop.
So do you happen to have those any of those affidavits on you along with the rest of the case? I had a question for any single affidavit.
I do not have a affidavit in front of me to verify that.
Do you know a specific name of any of those cases? Just so I can get one up on screen.
Of any of the cases?
Yeah, just so
No.
I can find
No,
documents,
you don't.
see anything.
You don't, in at least in this state, and I'm be willing to bet it's the same in most states. You do not need a specific case to give a sworn affidavit. You can give a sworn affidavit to the court in regards to X, in a lot of states. I'm not sure how it is in those states. If there is a case attached to every single one of those affidavits, I do not know what the cases are.
All right, so let me find anything. Seriously, there was a case in Michigan that included the Trump campaign attorney and Sidney Powell and other Republican Party lawyers over whether they should be sanctioned for filing a lawsuit to overturn the 2020 election, resulting in false claims about voter fraud in the swing state. So the lawsuit resulted in that these claims were false. The judge's questioning on Monday revealed, or not the judge, the other attorney. The questioning on Monday revealed a pattern of weak evidence behind the claims of fraud in the Michigan lawsuit, debunking allegations that thousands of ballots had been improperly counted or flipped by voting machines. Many claims in the affidavits were easily deemed to be untrue, the judge said. So this is just one case, but this is one where the affidavits were deemed to be untrue. Would you like me to find more for you, or is that one?
I mean, that one isn't indicative of all of the affidavits that have been gone over in public hearings.
Yeah, it's not indicative, but I'm just showing you that there
Well, yeah.
there have been
I'm sorry, go ahead.
affidavits that have been deemed to be false.
Oh, yeah. And again, I never claimed that no one ever perjures. Well, we can move on. In the interest of time, I'm sure both of us don't want to be here. Well, you said you could be. I don't want to be here all night.
Yeah, your choice.
Move on to the next point.
Is there any other points that you want to bring up that we haven't talked about?
It sounded like you were still going through a list of points that you wanted yes or no's to.
I think that the like stopping counting was a big one, and then I also just have some stuff. I just have some evidence that I have in case you want to bring anything up, but you haven't brought up anything that would warrant these. So I don't have any other specific points to note to you, and if you don't, then you can head off, or we can keep talking. Your choice.
Well, it's not directly relevant to. It's not directly relevant to the debate, to the topic of the debate, but I do. This is kind of a personal. It's sort of a personal question to you. Earlier on in this, earlier on in the interaction, the debate, whatever you want to call it, conversation. That's better. You said, I'm quoting you as directly as I can here. You said you came to debate, and I can't remember the exact verbiage in between, but you mentioned the standards that you debate at. And
I'm saying so. So can I clarify that statement, or do you have something specific you want to ask?
I'm not. I don't want. I have a thought to offer you. When you're having any conversation with anyone or debate with anyone, the standards, unless it is a interaction that is being dictated from an authority down to someone underneath their authority, the conditions of the interaction and the standards of the interaction should be mutually governed by all relevant parties who have a standing in the interaction. And I would just like you to think about that when you're interacting with people.
Well, I will say that I assume that you would be heavily prepared or decently prepared because I had offered Friday night, and you said if it was a debate you wanted more time to prepare. I said we can do whichever one you want, a debate or a conversation. But if you'd prefer to do Sunday, we can do that. You said Sunday. I assumed that meant you would want you wanted the prep time. You wanted to get your points in order, which would indicate a solid debate, at least to me.
Okay. Your assumption was faulty and not completely in error. I did do some prepping during that time, but I was much more interested in coming in here and having a cordial conversation.
Oh, I've been cordial. I'm not mad at you. I've just been showing you evidence.
So on that note, I would say that at many points, the way you've chosen to articulate your argument or the thing that you want to, well, your evidence, the evidence that you're bringing up, you have an air of condescension in a lot of times. This is a personal opinion. I'm not I'm not saying this is an attack. This is a personal perception.
What specifically did I say or do that was condescending?
It was the specific. It's the way you are not articulate. It's the inflection in your voice when you say some things. And again, that doesn't invalidate anything you said in and of itself. I'm not saying that invalidates your points in the debate or anything. Now this guy's feelings are hurt. Oh man. Oh. He got me. He pegged me.
Oh no.
No, I'm making. I'm merely. I'm merely. It's all good. I actually thought you were nice throughout the debate. In my opinion, you seem nice.
Yeah, and I also know that you've never actually like talked to me. You've just seen me in text. But I will say, as far as I'm aware, at least my chat, if this is wrong, please feel free to point it out. But this is how I constantly talk. Like the way that I talk to you is how I talk to anyone. Is how I talk to myself on stream. Like this is just how I talk. Nothing personal to you guys.
Okay, that's fair. That personal perceptions are a tricky thing because they vary person to person. So if that's, I'll take you at your word on that. If that's how you talk, fair enough on that one. Little mood. Yeah, but yeah, man. The only other thing I would really have to say is, you made the assumption that moving it forward in time would instantly give me enough prep time to read through all these other things. Bro, I spent half my day today being the president of my church at a congregational meeting. Half my day got eaten up with that. So no, I don't know what your time blocks look like, but I just did not have time to sit down and go through all the shit that I would have liked to if this was like a televised event or something, and I was representing all election deniers across the states. I would have made it a point to set aside to just say, hey, I can't not be studying right now. So
I will say, just for reference, so you know where I'm coming from into this. First of all, earlier you said I was lurking in your thing. I was not. I was coming in and out to see if you were like actually researching, and half the time I was in there, you weren't. But I was just seeing what was going on.
I have a tendency to get distracted, especially when I'm streaming.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do as well. But I will say that all of this research was found in approximately like 2 hours on my part. Granted, I quite literally do research day in, day out because I have to for my classes. So I'm kind of spiffy at it, you could say. But it's not like I spent like all day for the last 2 days preparing for this, just so you know.
Okay. Well, so then that makes two of us, but that is a very distinct difference between the two of us, sir. I I've never made any secret on my stream or at any other point in my life that researching and self-guided pursuit of knowledge, especially on subjects that don't innately interest me, is something I struggle with. It's not an innate skill I have, and it's not a skill that I've been able to make any serious headway into cultivating. You know,
Yeah, that's fair.
I
Research is hard.
it's a unique skill. You know, my unique skills are narrative, kinesthetic. I learn hands on, and I can remember once I'm taught something hands on, I remember how to do it forever. I can write a good book in terms of a story. When it comes to the discipline of pursuing knowledge and knowing what knowledge you need to pursue and pursuing it in a structured manner and high retention of information that I don't give a fuck about, that's just not a skill I have.
That's fair. That is perfectly fair. I know plenty of people the exact same way as you.
It's what you have. If you really are good at researching, that's a rare skill. It's a very valuable skill.
Oh, don't worry. I'll be using it. I'm going into law school.
Mm. And what specific branch of law?
Criminal defense. Possibly family law, but probably criminal defense.
That's respectable.
Yep. I'll be fucking researching and writing stupid shit all day, every day. And until then, I'll be streaming. Maybe even then. Corpse is not nice. Wargoat, fuck off, you little bitch. You say I'm hot when I wear a beanie, alright? You can't just turn that around. You sub to me, buddy.
You don't need to be nice to be physically attractive.
Okay, yeah, I realized. That's why I added the your sub to me.
Plus, I mean, he could be calling you a tyrant because he likes that. So.
I am a tyrant. Sometimes my chat wants things and I say fuck you guys. So yeah, you could call me a tyrant.
Bro, that's crazy.
Oh my god.
I like you, Wargoat.
Fuck you, Wargo. Alright. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about? It doesn't have to be actually related, but if you guys have anything else, I think you guys are cool, so if you want to talk about another topic, or if you guys want to head out, your choice.
Okay.
I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Yeah, off the top of my head, hang on.
That's facts, Bisky. That's straight facts.
Yeah, there's nothing in particular. You know, one of the I don't know how to articulate it in a way that isn't redundant, other than to simply say it seems that there's just a vastly different viewpoint and perspective issue going on here, and you are more willing to accept things at face value. I'm naturally more paranoid and conspiratorial, and I think that accounts for the discrepancy of allegiance to this particular issue. I think that dispositional difference is the dividing line for most people.
I would say it's slightly different, but we can go with that.
Well, I'm curious on your thoughts on it then.
I would say that if for me to believe something, it would have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Validity of the election has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt multiple times in courts. Election fraud narratives that would lead to the overturning of the election have not been proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
So, at the risk of sounding like a condescending ass myself, everything you just said falls within my statement. Because
I mean, you're saying more accept things at face value. It's more so the facts at play, right? Because there are plenty of
Well-
facts at play, and there are circumstantial facts for voter fraud. I will fully admit that, and I have fully admitted that throughout this. But circumstantial facts do not lead to beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is where my line is. For my line is for everything. It's also why I'm not religious. I know you're religious,
Well,
but like,
and that's what I was saying. That's the difference in disposition, because where you consider the line for what is and is not a fact is a matter of your internal disposition and in the measures of personality. This is stuff related. It's psychological stuff. I don't know how familiar you are with that field. That's one of my personal fields of interest.
I've studied it a little bit. But there is a difference between perception of facts and actual facts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you have to have a whole thing about what is objective truth.
Yeah, and that's too much for tonight.
Yeah, but we both agree that facts absolutely exist and perception does not change facts.
Yes.
We can both agree on that.
Yep, we can.
So, yeah, I think unless your stream has any burning questions, that I'm comfortable wrapping it up there and saying, "Hey, we disagree, but I still wish you well," and calling it a night.
Yeah, same to you. Give them a sec to see if they have anything, but I don't know exactly what.
Puke emoji.
Actually, no, I got one that I think that they would probably ask. What's your name's Zach, right?
Correct. Well, Zachary, legally speaking.
You go by Zach.
Yeah.
Okay. Zach, my man. 2 questions actually, because this is my chat and you must now answer my questions. Do you think
Sure.
Elon Musk is attractive?
No.
Do you think Zayn Malik is attractive?
Who?
Hold up. I'll pull up a picture on my stream. Or you can look him up.
He's like, I don't
Yeah,
know this
I'll pull him
person.
up. What's the name?
It's in chat. It's here. I'll put it in chat again. Zayn Malik.
Zayn. Okay, that's not quite how I would have spelled that, but
Yeah, it's a very weird spelling. It's why I put it in chat.
I wonder if that's a Middle Eastern. Yeah, it looks
one
like
of
he's
the
of Middle Eastern
rejects
descent.
from One Direction.
Zayn.
Also, you gotta switch to the images tab if you're on Google, because that first one that's from like Wikipedia or whatever is just those are not good pictures.
Oh, I always switch to the images tab. You don't know how someone looks until you've seen at least 3 or 4 pictures of them.
Good.
I would actually say that yeah, this is a pretty good looking dude. Yeah.
Solid choice there. You have officially earned at least a little bit of respect in the eyes of probably everyone in this chat. So,
Yeah, he has based on what I'm seeing, he has a great fashion sense. Very very modern James Dean.
yeah. Yeah.
Which is probably why Harry Styles got more famous than him after One Direction was no more. Because he actually has good fashion sense. And then Harry Styles was like, well, I'll just put this thing on that looks like a dress.
Fucking Harry Styles.
I
What is wrong with that guy?
know. It feels like a movie.
Zach, is your name with a CH, a CK, or a K?
Legally, yeah. It's Zachary. Legally.
So when you
Although-
shorten it, how do you spell it?
Well, when I sign my name, like my signature, I use a K.
Okay. Chat was asking. Had to pass that one on.
Yeah, and shameless self plug. I mentioned earlier that I'm a narrative guy. If you want proof that I'm not a complete retard, you can check out the thing that I'm most intellectually demonstrative on, which is narrative storytelling. Put a link in your chat right there.
Solid. Anonymous. We're not married, but give it a couple years. Anyways. If there's nothing else, I'll probably let you go, unless you have any final words.
Nope, other than Peace out. All right, let him know that Zach is a better way to spell it. Agreed. Agreed, Mothman. Oh, and I just realized it. Hey, what's up, Mothman? Good to see you, man.
Yes,
Oh, they were asking if you guys are married, not me now.
Oh, engaged.
Engaged.
It's coming down the pike.
Congrats.
Need a set date. Appreciate it. So yeah,
Ah.
man.
All right, peace out.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right, guys. How do we feel? How do we feel about that? Do we feel happy? Do we feel sad? How is chat feeling right now?